When my son told me that I would not be welcome at his house for Christmas, I smiled, got in my car, and made one call. By the new year, I had their mortgage payments connelled, and that was just the beginning of my plan. Justice must be restored and arrogance punished. You won't believe what I did next. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. The leather of Michael's couch creaked beneath me as I settled deeper into its embrace, a sound that had become familiar over countless Sunday visits. Outside, December painted Spokane in shades of gray and white, but inside, Isabella's vanilla candles created an illusion of warmth that never quite reached the heart. "I could make my famous turkey this year," I offered, watching my son's reflection in the 12-foot Christmas tree's ornaments. "The one with sage stuffing that Mom perfected over 30 years. You know, the recipe she got from her grandmother in Guadalajara, then made her own." The words floated between us like dust motes in afternoon sunlight. Michael's wedding ring caught the light as his fingers drummed against his knee. A nervous habit he'd had since childhood, one Maria would have recognized instantly. "Dad." His voice carried the weight of rehearsed words. "Unfortunately, you won't be welcome here for Christmas." The grandfather clock in the corner, another gift from me, ticked through 3 full seconds before I processed his words. In those moments, I saw everything. The crown molding I'd installed myself last spring. The hardwood floors refinished with money from my second mortgage. The kitchen beyond where Isabella's professional-grade KitchenAid mixer sat idle. A $2,000 monument to abandoned hobbies. "I must have misheard you, son." My voice came out steadier than my hands, which I folded carefully in my lap. Michael's gaze fixed on the marble coffee table. Imported Italian, Isabella had insisted. Nothing else would do. "Isabella's parents are coming." "The Jenkins. They've expressed preferences about the guest list." "Preferences?" I tasted the word like bitter medicine. "And what preferences would those be?" "Dad, please." He looked everywhere but at me. "You know how her family is about their traditions. They're very particular about maintaining certain standards." Through the archway, I could see the kitchen I'd helped renovate when Isabella declared that serious hosts need serious kitchens. The Viking range that cost more than my first car. The Sub-Zero refrigerator that held more wine than food. The marble countertops that had required me to cash out part of my 401k. "Standards," I repeated, after 5 years of, "It's not personal." The lie fell from his lips with practiced ease. I stood slowly, my knees protesting, not from age, but from the weight of realization. 8 years since Maria's death. 5 years of hemorrhaging money into this house, this life, this fantasy where I believed sacrifice equaled love. "Where would you suggest I spend Christmas, Michael?" His face crumpled like paper. "Maybe Aunt Rosa? Or we could do something the weekend after." "The weekend after." I let the words hang. Like Christmas is a dental appointment that can be rescheduled. I moved toward the door, past family photos that charted my gradual disappearance from their life. In the earliest ones, I stood next to Michael, proud and present. In each subsequent frame, I shifted further toward the edges until, in the most recent ones, I appeared only as a shadow in the background, if at all. "Dad, wait till the Jenkins," I said, hand on the doorknob. "Feliz Navidad, from the man who bought the house they'll be dining in." The December air slapped my face with honest cold as I walked to my truck. Behind me, Michael called my name once, a sound swallowed by the closing door and the vast distance that had always existed between us, hidden beneath transfers and checks, and the lie that money could bridge any gap. My truck's heater wheezed against the December cold as I navigated streets that held 30 years of memories. Each corner, each storefront, each traffic light had witnessed my transformation from a young father full of dreams to an old fool emptying his pockets, for people who saw him as an ATM with inconvenient emotions. At the red light on 29th and Grand, I watched a young father load presents into his SUV. His children's faces pressed against the windows, breath fogging the glass with excitement. Once that had been Michael and me, before Isabella, before the Jenkins, before I became the wrong kind of grandfather. The calculator in my head never stopped running anymore. $2,800 monthly for 60 months. The down payment, $47,000 from my home equity line. The kitchen renovation, $38,000. The landscaping, the furniture, the emergency funds when Michael lost his job, and Isabella's shopping didn't stop. $284,000. More than Maria and I had saved in 40 years of marriage. Gone like morning mist, leaving nothing but the bitter taste of being deemed unworthy of Christmas dinner in the house I'd helped them buy. I pulled into my driveway. Cracked concrete I couldn't afford to repair, sagging gutters I'd been ignoring, a flickering porch light that would wait another month. Inside the house felt hollow as a drum, echoing with Maria's absence and the cruel joke of my generosity. The phone rang as I set down my keys. Isabella's name on the screen like a warning label on poison. I answered on the fourth ring, letting her wonder. Dennis. Her voice dripped artificial sweetener. I heard about the little misunderstanding with Michael. No misunderstanding, Isabella. Your message was crystal clear. A pause filled with the rustle of shopping bags. Probably another spree funded by their perpetually tight budget that somehow always had room for her wants. You have to understand my parents' perspective. They're traditional people with certain expectations. Traditional. I leaned against my kitchen counter, still wearing my coat. Like the tradition of taking $250,000 from the Mexican handyman who isn't good enough for their table. Don't be dramatic. This is about fit, about compatibility. My parents are educated people, Dennis. My father went to Princeton. My mother speaks 4 languages. They discuss art, literature, current events. What exactly would you contribute? Stories about laying tile? Heat flooded my chest, but my voice remained steady. I built a business from nothing. I've employed 50 people. I've paid more taxes than your father earned in his best year. Money isn't everything, Dennis. Breeding matters. Education matters. And frankly, she paused, loading her final arrow. Maria understood her place better than you do. The silence that followed could have frozen hell. What did you say about my wife? I'm simply saying she knew how to blend in. She didn't make waves. She understood that some spaces weren't meant for... My wife, I interrupted, my voice dropping to something I didn't recognize, had more grace and dignity in her little finger than your entire bloodline will ever possess. Oh, please. She was a house cleaner who got lucky. At least she had the good sense to... I hung up. The phone clattered on the counter as I stood in my empty kitchen, surrounded by the ghosts of better times. Maria would have been horrified by what our son had become, by the people he'd chosen, by the way he'd learned to price dignity in dollar signs. But Maria was gone, and I was done pretending her memory deserved to be dishonored by association with these people. I walked to my desk and pulled out the folder I'd been avoiding. 5 years of bank statements, 5 years of automatic transfers, 5 years of bleeding myself dry for people who saw me as hired help with a checking account. Time to stop the hemorrhaging. The documents spread across my kitchen table like evidence of a crime. 5 years of bank statements, each showing the same automatic transfer. $2,800 on the 15th of every month, regular as heartbeat, reliable as sunrise, foolish as love without conditions. My calculator confirmed what my heart already knew. $168,000 in mortgage payments alone. Not counting the down payment. Not counting the emergencies, the repairs, the furniture, the vacations I'd funded while eating peanut butter sandwiches for lunch. The bank's automated system answered in 2 languages, how accommodating for people like me. Customer service connected quickly, professionally, without judgment about why a 62-year-old man was canceling payments that had been bleeding him dry for half a decade. "I need to cancel an automatic transfer," I said, my voice carrying the weight of decision. "Certainly, Mr. Flores. I see the transfer here. $2,800 monthly to Wells Fargo account ending in 7423. You've been making this transfer for 5 years. 5 years. The words tasted like ash. Cancel it effective immediately. Done. The transfer has been canceled. Is there anything else? No, I said, surprising myself with how good the word felt. That's everything. I hung up and sat in the sudden silence of my house, surrounded by all the things I'd neglected while funding someone else's dream. The dripping faucet I couldn't afford to fix, the drafty windows letting in December cold, the empty refrigerator because every dollar counted when you were supporting 2 households on 1 pension. My phone buzzed with texts I didn't read. Michael probably, wanting to apologize without changing anything. Isabella, definitely, needing money for something essential like new throw pillows or organic wine. I walked to my fireplace and struck a match, watching 5 years of bank statements turn to smoke and ash. The fire felt warmer than any Christmas gathering they'd never invite me to. For the first time since Maria died, I poured myself the good whiskey, the bottle I'd been saving for a special occasion that kept getting postponed for other people's needs. Tonight felt special enough. "To you, Maria," I said to her photo on the mantel, "to our son who lost his way. And to me, for finally finding mine." 3 days later, my morning coffee came with a side of character assassination. Page 3 of the Spokane Review featured my face, an old photo from my company website, back when I still smiled easily, beneath a headline that made my blood run cold: "Local businessman abandons elderly couple at airport during holiday storm." The article was a masterpiece of manipulation. Cody and Catherine Jenkins, visiting from Portland, had been left stranded in dangerous weather conditions when family friend Dennis Flores failed to appear for a promised pickup. They'd waited over 4 hours in frigid temperatures as a winter storm warning threatened the region. Winter storm warning. It had been 52 degrees and sunny. "We were shocked by his callousness," Cody was quoted as saying. "At our age, being abandoned like that isn't just inconsiderate, it's dangerous. We're concerned about Mr. Flores' mental state. This erratic behavior seems to be escalating. No mention of Christmas dinner rejection. No context about years of financial support. No hint that these elderly victims were in their late 50s, younger than me, and perfectly capable of calling an Uber like everyone else in 2024. The byline belonged to Patricia Morrison, lifestyle editor. 3 minutes of searching revealed the connection. Mutual contacts between Cody's banking network and Patricia's editor. The story hadn't just appeared, it had been planted, cultivated, weaponized. I set down the paper and opened my laptop. If they wanted war, they'd chosen the wrong veteran. Social media told the real story. Cody's LinkedIn, retired First National Bank executive, country club member, connections throughout Spokane's business community, a man with reputation to protect. Catherine's Instagram, a carefully curated fantasy of elegant living. Wine tastings at the house I helped pay for. Charity luncheons where she performed generosity with other people's money. Vacation photos tagged #blessed while I covered their utility bills. Isabella's Facebook, the smoking gun. Photos of our beautiful home. Check-ins at expensive restaurants during months I'd covered their mortgage. Status updates about hosting Christmas dinner with select family and friends. Select family. not including the man who'd made it all possible. But it was Michael's recent LinkedIn activity that gave me the final piece. A new connection with Patricia Morrison, made just days before the article ran. They'd made 3 critical mistakes. First, they'd underestimated me. Second, they'd gone public. Third, they'd documented everything online, creating a perfect catalog of their subsidized lifestyle. I began assembling my evidence, bank statements, receipts, screenshots of social media posts showing off purchases I'd funded. The newspaper article annotated with my corrections, lie, next to claims about dangerous weather, false beside allegations of mental instability, missing context, where they'd conveniently omitted 5 years of financial support, 12 copies, one for each guest at their Christmas dinner, according to Isabella's Facebook event page. They wanted to destroy my reputation? I'd show them what destruction really looked like. Christmas Eve arrived dressed in gray clouds and bitter wind, the kind of weather that made you grateful for warm houses you were actually welcome in. I dressed carefully in my navy suit, the one I'd worn to Maria's funeral, now repurposed for another kind of farewell. By 6:30 p.m., I was parked across from their house, watching guests arrive for the dinner party that would become legendary in Spokane social circles, though not for reasons Isabella intended. Their home glowed with warm light, cars filling the driveway, laughter drifting through windows. Through the glass, I could see Isabella playing hostess in the house my money had helped secure, serving wine I'd probably paid for to people who'd read about what a monster I was in the newspaper. Time to balance the scales. The front door was unlocked. Isabella loved bragging about their safe neighborhood, so different from where people like me lived. I entered quietly, following the sounds of conversation and clinking glasses to the dining room. 12 faces turned toward me with expressions ranging from surprise to horror. Isabella's wine glass froze halfway to her lips. Michael went pale as parchment. Cody and Catherine looked like they'd seen their own ghosts. "Good evening," I said pleasantly, setting my briefcase on their marble sideboard. "I hope you don't mind me joining your Christmas celebration." "Dennis," Isabella's voice cracked. "This is inappropriate. You need to leave immediately." "Actually," I said, opening my briefcase, "I think your guests deserve to know who really paid for this dinner, this house, and the lifestyle you've been flaunting." I moved around the table like a dealer at a casino, placing evidence packets in front of each guest. Bank statements, receipts, the newspaper article with my annotations, 5 years of financial hemorrhaging documented in black and white. "My God," whispered a woman in pearls, staring at the numbers. $168,000 in mortgage payments. Plus down payment, I added helpfully. Plus renovations, plus furniture, about $284,000 total. From a man who apparently isn't good enough to share Christmas dinner. The room's temperature seemed to drop as 12 people absorbed the evidence. I watched their faces change, surprise to understanding to disgust. "This is the man you wrote that article about?" A silver-haired gentleman held up the newspaper. "The one who abandoned you at the airport?" "It was 52 degrees and sunny," I said. "They weren't elderly victims. They were my son's in-laws who had just banned me from Christmas dinner for being too Mexican and too working class for their educated sensibilities." "Cody," the woman in pearls said slowly, "you used your banking connections to plant a hit piece on the man who's been supporting your daughter." Cody's face had gone from red to gray. "You don't understand the full situation." "I understand perfectly," she interrupted. "This is disgraceful, absolutely disgraceful." Isabella made one last desperate attempt. "Everyone, please, this is a family matter." "No," I said firmly. "This became a public matter when you tried to destroy my reputation in the newspaper. When you decided my dignity was acceptable collateral damage for your pride." I looked around the table at faces I'd never see again, people who now knew exactly who had been funding the lifestyle they'd admired. "Enjoy your dinner," I said, closing my briefcase. "It's the last one I'll be paying for." Behind me, the room erupted. Voices raised in accusation, chairs scraping, the sound of a carefully constructed social facade collapsing like a house of cards. It was the best Christmas music I'd ever heard. The foreclosure notice arrived in March, delivered by certified mail like a verdict. 3 months of missed mortgage payments, $8,400 in arrears. 14 days to cure or face proceedings. I set the letter aside and returned to my coffee, reading the notice the way you'd read about someone else's problems, with distant interest but no personal investment. My phone had been ringing for weeks. Isabella's increasingly frantic voicemails. Cody and Catherine, whose social standing had evaporated after Christmas. Even Michael, whose calls I'd been ignoring, waiting to see how long pride could hold out against desperation. The answer was 97 days. He stood at my door on a Thursday evening, looking like he'd aged a decade in 3 months. The confident man who'd excluded me from Christmas had been replaced by someone hollow-eyed and desperate. "Dad," he said, "we need to talk." I let him in, noting how he looked around my renovated space. New furniture bought with my first mortgage-free paycheck, fresh paint on walls neglected for 5 years, repairs I could finally afford. "Nice place," he said quietly. "It's what happens when you keep your money instead of giving it to people who don't appreciate it." He perched on my couch's edge like a man afraid to get comfortable. "I'm sorry, Dad. About everything. Christmas, the newspaper, the way I treated you." "Go on." "I didn't know about the article. When I found out what Cody did, what they said about you, about Mom." He ran his hands through his hair. "Christ, Dad, the things they said behind your back." "And what exactly did they say about your mother?" "That she knew her place. That she understood boundaries better than you did." My jaw tightened, but I kept my voice level. "And you let them. I should have defended you. Both of you. I should have been a son instead of a coward." We sat in silence, the weight of 5 years of mistakes filling the space between us. "The house is in foreclosure," he said finally. "I know. We can't make the payments without—" He stopped, hearing how it sounded. "Without my help," I finished. "Without the Mexican handyman's money that wasn't good enough to earn him a place at your table." He nodded miserably. "Isabella calculated it after Christmas. Everything you gave us. Over $280,000. $284,468, I corrected. I know the exact amount because I finally added it up. 5 years of supporting people who saw me as an embarrassment." "Dad, I'm so sorry. I don't know how to fix this." "You can't fix it, son. The money's gone. The years are gone. The chance to be a family, that's gone too. Are you asking me to resume the payments?" His face told the answer before his mouth could form words. "You'll figure it out," I said, not unkindly. "Get a second job. Sell the house. Downsize. Live within your means instead of expecting others to fund your fantasy." "I lost you, didn't I?" His voice broke. "I chose them over you. And now I've lost everything. You didn't lose me, Michael. You threw me away. There's a difference." He stood slowly, shoulders straightening with something that might have been dignity. "For what it's worth, when you stood up at Christmas dinner, I was proud of you. Embarrassed and angry, but proud." "Good. Maybe there's hope for you yet." After he left, I stood on my back porch, watching spring arrive in Spokane. Trees budding, with new growth. Air warming with possibility. In 4 months, I'd be 63. Maria had been gone 8 years. I'd wasted 5 of them being a doormat. I wouldn't waste any more. My phone buzzed with a text from Rosa. Dinner Sunday. The kids want to show you their school projects. I smiled and typed back. Wouldn't miss it. Real family, I'd learned, wasn't about blood or obligation or mortgage payments. It was about people who actually wanted you at their table, who saw you as more than a wallet with inconvenient emotions. The whiskey tasted like freedom, and the future looked exactly as bright as I was willing to make it. 6 months later, I received a letter with no return address. Michael's handwriting, careful and deliberate. Dad, we lost the house, sold it for barely enough to cover the mortgage. We're renting a 2-bedroom apartment near the airport. Isabella left, said I couldn't provide the life she deserved. Her parents don't return my calls anymore. I work 2 jobs now. Morning shift at Home Depot, evenings at a call center. I think about you every day, about what you built from nothing, about the dignity you maintained even when we tried to strip it from you. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I finally understand what you tried to teach me. That respect isn't bought with money, and family isn't defined by blood. Your son, if I can still call myself that, Michael. P.S. I kept 1 photo from the house. It's of you and Mom at my college graduation. You both look so proud. I wasn't worthy of that pride then. Maybe someday I will be. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my desk drawer. Outside, Rosa's grandchildren played in my yard, their laughter filling spaces that had been empty too long. They called me Abuelo Dennis and fought over who got to help with my weekend projects. Sometimes the price of dignity isn't what you lose. It's what you find when you finally stop paying for other people's approval. Maria would have understood that. She always did understand the important things, even if others thought she knew her place. Her place was beside me, and mine was wherever I was valued for more than my checking account balance. The sun set over Spokane, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Somewhere across town, my son was learning what I'd learned too late, that the only approval worth seeking is your own, and the only family worth having is the one that wants you at their table, not for what you can provide, but for who you are. The price of dignity, it turns out, is exactly what you're willing to stop paying for its absence. And that price, it's always worth it.